told Cullen, I called you last night because I said I want to do Dan, making the first podcast we do, because we've been doing a lot of stuff together, and Dan really helped to promote me when he saw something about me when I was in the ACCJ.
Yeah, when you're the president of the ACCJ.
Well, we can start off with that story, and then we're going to talk about get into Dan deeply. But real briefly, all of us know each other because we were all ex-Air Force. Air Force.
Right.
We've all been stationed here in Japan.
Yep.
You two were in Okinawa together, so you knew each other first.
Yeah.
All right.
But it was after the military that we met.
Right.
Yeah.
My introduction to you was when you came to the American Chamber when I was president. This is 2003. And he came with two white guys. So three of them. And they asked me ahead of time, Access TV?
Yeah, Access TV.
Access
ACTV.
ACTV. To interview me, and I wasn't turned down any interviews. I wanted to be interviewed by everybody.
Right.
In fact, I saw an interview that you did with a newspaper, and that's why I got the idea.
Okay.
Because I was like, a brother in charge of the ACCJ? I definitely want to meet this man, you know.
I'm sitting in there, and I had a cold that day, but that's the only day they asked for, and I wouldn't try to reschedule stuff. And I had a little bit of laryngitis, but they come over there, and Dan's standing in the back, and Paul was putting on my
and Richard.
my mic,
Right.
and Richard was on the camera. So, because of the society we grew up in, I assumed this was Paul, and he must be the script guy. Because Dan's in the back not saying a word.
Right.
So as he's putting up the mic and stuff, so I'm asking about the company, and I said, well, so when did you start this company? He said, I did. I said, well, whose company is it? He said, it's his. I said, what the hell are you doing here all up on me?
And I can hear him. I heard him say that.
I got upset.
I heard him say that.
You're touching me and all this stuff for it. It still was my brother. So then Dan and I hooked up and became good friends from that point forward.
Right.
And Dan's been doing it. I mean, the man that's met almost any talent of any substance that's come to Japan, Dan has made sure they come through him.
Right.
And I mean, as far as he's interviewed them, he's been there on top. Will Smith. Who else do you have? You tell us.
Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise, Rihanna, Beyonce, Halle Berry. You filmed me with Halle Berry.
I should know. You asked me to come there and take pictures. And she said
he was doing that in Okinawa with the paper before you got into
a newspaper,
the movie
which
side
is how I met Cullen.
Yeah,
I met Cullen. He had to take the story.
I got a call, and a young
man. He was running. First of all, he was running advertising in the newspaper I worked on for his business, which was one of the first dating business ever created.
It's called You and Me International Dating and Marriage. And I got a call from a young man named Dan Smith, and he said, my name is Dan Smith. Would you like to, what did you say?
I'd like to do an interview. I'd like to do an interview with you.
Yeah. No, you didn't say that. You said,
I'd like to do a feature.
I'm an editor.
Yeah, I'm an editor
here and I would like to come down to your office and talk to you. And
about doing a feature.
Yeah. And I said, no, it wasn't like that. I said, I don't need an editor, and I hung up. You know.
Yeah, I didn't get to talk that first part. You did. That's right. You hung up.
Yeah. And then Dan called me back, and he said, do you know what an editor is? And I said, no, I don't. But I don't need one. But I know I don't need one. You know. And then he said, no, I want to put a story of your business in our paper. And I said, well, if that's the case, come on down.
And it was sort of like it was sort of like the same thing with you, because I was doing this, and he had an ad in there, and people had talked about him. And I was like, man, it was like maybe one or two brothers who actually had their own business, because we all we're in the military. We know that most of the people gravitate and they stay around the military, and things like that. So it's really rare when people develop a business outside of the military that's successful. And then when you see a black person doing it, it's just so. With me, me being a journalist at the time, it was just like the natural thing. It was like instinct,
But you didn't know of me that time. You just seen the ad.
No, I saw the ad, but they told me one of the guys. I think it was Roy Forster. Told me like, he's a black guy. You guys probably know each other.
Wow. So Dan, when you how would you like to talk about yourself when you go through? What are the things that are important to you that you like talking about?
I think when people ask me like, why did you get in the media business and stuff like that? Well, it was by accident, but my family, my mother was a freelance journalist. That's she was one of like 8 things, you know. But that was the thing that she did, and my uncle was a photographer for the newspaper, so I was always infatuated with that, you know, because in St. Louis they had a black newspaper, you know, which a lot of cities didn't have, but they had a black newspaper, and I remember they did a story on me because I was coaching a high school football team. Now I was really shy in high school. I don't think you guys were shy, but I was like really, really shy. You know, I couldn't talk to anybody, but they did this story on me. And people just came up and started talking to me, you know, and I thought, wow, only from this was that, you know, and it was such a big radical change. Because I mean, nobody knew me in high school, and then everybody knew me in high school just because of the newspaper. It was that. But then, like everybody else, I went into the military. Basically, I was studying to be an engineering, architectural engineering draftsman. But at the school that I went to was a special school. You had to qualify to go to the school. And my problem was that being the only black guy in the classes, I would go there, I'd do my drawings and stuff, and then I'd come back from lunch and stuff, and they'd be all torn up or scribbled up and stuff like that, you know. That's kind of like my first serious exposure to racism, you know.
What grade was this?
This was, I think the ninth grade. The ninth grade, yeah, it was my freshman year in high school. It really jarred me, you know, because, you know, I didn't really want to go to that school because it was like way away from my neighborhood. They had to bus me out to the school. I mean, it was like a 35-minute thing, and everybody else went back to like the regular schools, you know. So I felt I was punished, actually. I didn't realize that, you know, now being older, I realized, that was an honor to be selected for this type of school, you know. But back then, all I thought is like, I'm going away from all my friends and stuff like that. And it was like, I think it was like 4 of us out of our neighborhood who got to go to that school, you know. And so that kind of led to me joining the military, and I was in the military for a couple of years. I was first stationed at Travis Air Force Base. I believe you were stationed at Travis, right?
Yeah.
You were stationed at Travis. Yeah, I was stationed there. I was in like fifth heaven because, like I said, I was a shy guy. I became like an unshy guy, but I found that if I told people like I was something other than the military, basically what I did. So just as I started writing poetry at the time, so I was going to the college. I was writing poetry. I was sort of like a little small hit on the circuit as a poetry guy, you know, and stuff like that. But the thing is, I wasn't into drugs, you know, back then, and the whole set was this, and so I was like the odd guy out because everybody like, well, man, you must be stoned because you write some crazy stuff. I like, nah, I kind of write this like naturally, you know. So I eventually got stationed over from there to Thailand. And so I was in Thailand, and actually I got sent into Vietnam first. You know, I was there on temporary duty, and I remember I had this guy, it was another brother, we actually hated each other. We actually got into a fight, you know. But when they started drawing down in Vietnam, they told a bunch of us to say, look, you know, we're going to send some of you guys to Thailand, but we're going to keep some of you guys in Vietnam. Well, I was one of the guys they were going to keep in Vietnam. He was one of the guys they were going to send to Thailand. But he had married a Vietnamese woman. And it was the first time I actually thought, I caught myself when I made one of those like men decisions. Like I can tell I was no longer a boy because we hated each other. And when he came to me, and I mean, he just came to me and just said, hey man, you know, we don't like each other. But he said, my family's here. I'd like to stay with my family. And I'd like to trade assignments with you, you know. And I thought, man, that takes a lot of things because we were literally fighting like, you know, and I hated him. I mean, I hated this guy.
Right.
You know, he hated me. But when I saw what he would do for his family, you know, he'd come to his enemy, you know, and basically say, hey, you know, everything, my life is in your hands, you know. So when I did that, you know, I went to Thailand. And that actually started me to thinking, you know, like, man, because I was kind of like a party guy. I'm not going to lie. You know, I loved the military. You know, it was just, you know, it's a free meal, a cot, and stuff like that, and whatever. I didn't think about like part-time jobs or stuff like that. I didn't even think about the income part of it. I was just that I had been, you know, grew up. It's my first time on my own, and so I did that. But so what happened? I met this other brother when I got named Jermaine, and I used to see Jermaine while everybody else was partying. I'd see Jermaine, and he'd be out. He had grocery bags and stuff like that, and so one day I put him aside. I said, man, what are you doing? And he says, oh, you don't want to know. I said, no, let me know. And he says, well, he says, I go down there a weekend and I buy food and I give it to orphanages. He said, there's a lot of like half black kids, in this orphanage and nobody takes care of them, And I was just so impressed with that. And the guy said, hey, he said, but I'm not trying to recruit you to go like that. So I started doing that, and then he one day he said, hey, somebody told me you like a poet. I said, yes, I just a poet, stuff like that. So he was saying, well, man, I'm not a good writer, but if I can write, I write about some of this injustice and blah 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 blah. And so we came up with the idea to create this underground newspaper called For My People. I can show. I still have the cover, and I was literally putting out an underground black newspaper for about 5 or 6 months, and then one day, OSI, which most people don't know, it's like, but everybody knows NCIS because it's the name, but it's OSI. They come in and they call me, and they says, "Hey, we're bringing you in, and you're going to report to the base commander's office." And I'm like this, and I'd been pretty much cut my nose under, I wasn't a troublemaker and stuff like that, but I was stunned when these guys pulled me in, and they pulled me into the commander's office, no less. Cause I was only an airman, maybe by this time airman first class, but I knew that's not good when they call you into the commander's office. So the first thing the commander, I remember him being I think his name was Goodall. Commander Harry Goodall. It's very. He was actually different than what I thought the guy would be, because he's very personal. He was kind of like an athlete, and he liked being an athlete. I don't think he liked being a colonel in the military. I think he would have preferred being an athlete, but he was stuck. He drafted like everybody else. And so he goes to me. So first he says, "Hey, Aaron Smith, now the OSI guys have been jerks. They've been assholes. They're like, hey, pushing me around. I think one guy even kind of punched me, just to say, hey, make sure you salute the colonel and all this kind of stuff, right?" And so he comes up, and the first thing he just comes out and he shakes my hand. I like that. So I said, "Hey, so I hear you're the editor of the illegal newspaper." And I go, "What?" He says, "Yeah, the illegal, is it My People or For My People?" He mixed up the name and stuff like that. And so the first thing I did says, "I don't know what you're talking about." And the guy looks at me, the OSI guys look at me, and the colonel, he's a little taken back. He's like, he said, yeah, well, he said, "I know you're the editor." He says, I want to talk to you as the capacity of the editor of the paper." I says, "So I don't know what you guys are talking about." Yeah. I said, I don't know. He says, "So you never seen the For My People or whatever?" I says, "No clue." And so the OSI guy, he walks up to me, and they go out, and they open this thing, and there's like 3 or 4 pictures, and there's me distributing as we young. And I look up and I go, "Whoa, man!" I'm thinking now that this is it. I'm in trouble, because I had a girlfriend at the time, which turned out to be my wife, and I'm thinking like, oh, my whole world's come to an end. And the guy goes, son, look. He said, "This ain't what you think it is." He says, "Yeah, you're in trouble for that." He said, "Because that's illegal. You shouldn't be doing that. You can't distribute it. You can't just distribute stuff on a military base." He says, "I need an editor for my base newspaper." And I was a little bit like Cullen then. I'm like,
I don't need
what? What? Editor for what? He said, right. I didn't call myself an editor of the newspaper. I didn't even know what that was. I said, "Editor for a base newspaper." He said, "Yeah." He said, and the base newspaper was called The Watchman. And he goes, and he pulls it out. And I remember thinking like, oh, man, that piece of junk, And he goes, and he said, "Do you read this?" I said, no. He said, "Yeah." See, that's the problem. He said, "I found more people reading your thing than I found reading our base newspaper." He said, "So I want you to take our base newspaper." He said, "Oh, yeah." And he says, "Also, you got to do like a radio show on the AFN thing, because we run the newspaper and the TV thing."
Right, together.
And he said, and his guy was kind of pregnant. He said, "Or you can go to jail."
So that's how you got involved in this accident.
That's how I got into it. I had no idea the military had this kind of profession.
Journalism.
Yeah, journalism, stuff like that. But so I got in, and the guy told me, he pulled me in. He said, "Hey," he said, "I'm going to introduce you to Staff Sergeant Ackerman or whatever his name." He said, "He's the guy running this." He says, "Look, we got schools they'll send you to school, stuff like that. You can go to college doing this. He says,
what was your career field before that?
I was a munitions.
You're a musician.
I was in munitions.
Munitions,
I was out. We were out. We were out 7 miles away from the base, so if they blow us up, they don't kill people on the base.
Right.
So that's
Wait, but for how many years did you do munitions?
I did because I started out. I lasted 3 days as a cop. I got fired as a cop, security policeman cop, and then I was in admin.
Okay.
I was an admin guy, but then they had shortages of munitions, so they sent me out to the munitions thing.
But that has nothing to do with that, man.
It has nothing to do with that.
But again, you in control of how much munitions you had.
Well, no. That sounded more romantic than what it was. No, we were basically just guarding bombs. We were guarding bombs because the U.S. was scaling back everything.
I was in supply.
They were scaling back, and I hate to say this, but the military wasn't near as organized back then as it is now.
Of course,
because it just literally, they just had people in charge. And I remember we was back in this one area, and these guys are just playing with these grenades and stuff. And I'm thinking, like, ain't that dangerous, But in honesty, this one guy was stoned out of his mind, And so I'm thinking, like, oh man, whatever, I got to get out of this. So that was also in the back of my mind when the guy said, hey, you can move to the thing. So anyway, so I did that. And so what I did after that is I got married. I decided to make more of a career because I was a little bit the same way. I wanted to get out, but every time it seemed like it was time for me to get out, I was at a place that I really liked. And I was overseas, which I had already figured out early on that I like being overseas as opposed to being in the U.S.
You consciously?
I consciously felt that because I thought, in the U.S., nobody ever gave me responsibility like this. Nobody ever did this and stuff like that. And like Muhammad Ali said, I was a big follower back then because this is the Vietnam era.
That's right.
He says, hey, the Vietnamese never called me nigger, and stuff like that. So So I was that. But also I was one of those guys who I did my research, and I found out that you can have part-time jobs in the military. So every base I went to the local newspaper, and I got a job, or the local radio station, and I got a job. So all the time I was in the military building up my career, I was doing more building up my civilian career because I had worked on. I got stationed back home, and that was one of the best experiences I had because I wrote for our local newspaper, which, again, when I was in high school, nobody knew me, but then all of a sudden, people would come up to me like, wow, remember Dan Smith? Look at his story and stuff. And I remember my mom one time, when my mom, I had this big story about war, about something about the military, how they prepare for it. And they did the whole double page, this Globe Democrat, they did the whole double page. And my mom just sat there, and she must have read the story like 100 times. She was so proud. She was calling people, on the phone, and people was out there. And she would say, "Hey, come and see what my son did." So
you're the first child she had.
Yeah, I'm a twin. So my sister is 3 minutes older.
So how many siblings?
We had 8.
Yeah. Oh, everyone's still good.
No, my youngest brother died. Yeah.
Okay.
So since the time that you have been in Japan, what are your top 3 turning points in your life that landed Dan Smith into the Dan Smith that he is right now?
Well, I think one thing, I had to give Lance a little bit of credit because, Lance showed me a different world. Because up until then, like I said, the only successful black men I've seen were you and a guy, Reggie Dumers, who owns a restaurant called Sauces in Okinawa. But then when I saw Lance, and I thought, wow. And we actually started this series called Success in Japan. Yeah. And that fueled me. That fueled me because I thought, now, there was we had a 2-tier thing. So I thought, well, I can't do Success in Japan, but I'm going to do My Life in Japan. Remember, I created that right after Success? Yeah. Because Lance, Success in Japan, he was talking to CEOs and stuff like My Life in Japan, I was talking to the party girl here, or what, I mean, more than that, but it gave me the confidence, to do that. Right. Because I thought, and I was introduced to circles I mean, so it elevated me. I mean, I was working out of a dormitory, which both I think you guys knew me when I lived in a dormitory.
I met you when you were living with me.
Oh yeah, that's right. He knew it was basically a dormitory full of English teachers, you know.
Yeah, I remember that.
And the reason why I was there is because they all worked, and we only had one computer, so I used that computer like it was my business computer for most of the day, you know, until they come home.
Well, to be fair, the thing, when you came to me and we started talking, and you told me what you did, and I never got involved with the media, but I knew that was important.
Yeah.
When I was president of the American Chamber, so I used our division there to make sure. They said of the chamber presidents, I was the most known.
Yeah.
Because I made sure. I was the first black president they ever had.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure. But when you came in, I figured that would be a springboard to get in further. And then you said, look, let's do something.
Yeah.
I said, let's do success. I mean, the area that I'm interested in, Success Japan, and we came along, and I started watching how easy everybody. Dan was just feeding me with a bunch of stuff. Man, people love to be on. You just put a camera in front of them.
Right.
I told everyone nobody was turning me down.
Yeah.
I went to them. I said, let's do this. We did the president of United Airlines.
Jane Yamano.
We did the president of Corning.
Yeah.
We did Jane Yamano.
Yeah, did the lawyer. We did
the lawyer. We
it
did
was
the first in Springfield. He's still kicking. He's over urban development.
Yeah.
So we just kept on going, and we go in there. Boom. And Dan, the thing that I liked about it, which I needed to have, I think all three of us are alphas. He said, "This is yours. Tell me how you want it."
Yep.
I edited the way I wanted it. We did it. If I said Dan, he said, "Okay."
Yep.
You remember the guy was going to bring him. We were going to do something in trade.
Yeah.
And there was a guy that came to me, and I said, "Let's do this." And there was a guy that we sat up and we did one at the American Club. And it was horrible.
Yeah.
I didn't feel good about it either. And then when I said, "Dan, we're not going to do it," he said, "Phew." I'm so happy because I sure didn't want to do that, but I didn't have the heart to tell you, man. I would have did it if you wanted to. But I didn't think this would work. But I just, it wasn't going to work. He was saying because we're in Japan and we're a day ahead of everyone, it would help the trades in New York. If you kind of remember that.
Yeah.
But go ahead, no.
But that was the thing. So Lance was the first one because, you know, he brought the bar up, and I saw the bar get up, and then and he, you know, as you know, Lance gives you that thing like, hey, dude, if you're gonna be around me, you know, you got to bring your bar up. He didn't say it, but you know, he comes across to him like, hey, if I want to hang with Lance, bring my game up. So I really worked on that, and then the second thing was I got an opportunity. Again, it came out of a situation where I knew a guy named Broderick Morris, you know, and we've been off and on good friends, but we was actually at the point this thing happened, we were not really that close. We had our relationship had been estranged. He's another black man who was doing very well. He was doing music and things like that, but we just had a falling out. Mo, yeah. We had a falling out, and what happened was he brought Michael Jackson to Japan, and this was a year before, and I saw it. It was on MTV. It was a disaster. The media was a disaster. Everything was that. And everybody, all I could hear people talking about, like, oh, yeah, look at him, but that's what they deserve, Michael Jackson, this guy, blah, blah. But I was thinking, like, you know, that was a hell of a thing to go to Michael Jackson, the Michael Jackson, who was suffering from, you know, the trial and stuff like that, bring him all the way to Japan. And I remember two things. Although the media people were, like, talking about how this was all screwed up, MTV, blah, 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 I saw them fans, you know, and I saw this woman cry for, like, 10 minutes. It looked like 10 minutes to see Michael Jackson. So I called him up and I told him, I said, hey man, you probably don't want to hear this. I said, I know because everything's going. I said, but I'm actually proud of you for doing this. I said, that just the audacious, you know, thing to do this. And he said, man, I was just about to call you. And at first I was like, now what? Yeah, he said.
So this is the story in reverse of remember the guy in Vietnam coming to you, asking you to switch assignments. Now you're doing the same thing with Mo.
So and I did. But so he told me. He said, "Look," he said, "You know that it didn't go well." And he says, "I've convinced Michael to come back for a second try." He says, "But he told me he will not do it unless I can get a professional to handle the media." And he said, "Bro," he said, "you and I, we fought a lot, but he said one thing I've always acknowledged it. You're one of the best media people I know." He said, because I say that he's another guy I did a story on with the Japan Update. And he said, I want to bring you in. And I was like, hey man, look, I don't want to work for you. I don't want. He said, no. He said, you tell me your terms. You tell me how I get you to say yes. And I said, I said, well, okay, I want to film. I want to do it my way, and I don't want to report directly to you, or in fact, I don't even want to get paid. I'll do it, but I want to keep some of my footage so that I can share it. And he says, okay. He says, okay. So he says, great. And then 2 days later, he called me. He said, okay, so Michael wants to meet you. And I'm like, yeah, right. Michael Jackson. He said, yeah, he's going to be flying in. He said, we're going to meet at the airport. He said, bring your team down, blah, 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 stuff like that. And sure enough, I come to the airport, and there's Michael Jackson. And at this time now, I'm thinking, okay, maybe I'm a little bit in over my head. Because he's in the car, and I walk in, and he was parked in a van at the airport, Narita Airport. I get in, there's his mom, there was 3 kids, and there was a girlfriend. And I'm hearing all the rumors about Michael Jackson, but it was a girlfriend. His girlfriend was there, And the first thing he looks at me, he says, hi, I'm Michael Jackson. I go, yeah, I like that. And he says, I hear some good things about you. He said, Mo, tell me some good things. He says, hey, why don't you tell me about yourself, And I was just like, this was so surreal. And I tell you, I was in the military, this and stuff like that, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, like, I'm a huge fan and stuff like that. He says, now tell me what you want me to do. I said, you mean like, he says, yeah. He says, what should I do? I said, you mean like now? He said, yeah. He said, from now, And I said, oh, well, I guess you're going to have to go into here. And he said, so do you want me to go in, or you want to film, or how do you want to do this? And I was like, he had already, he had already started. And he said, yeah. He says, and then he looked at me, and he kind of laughed. He said, no. He said, I'm working for you now. Just like that. And so he said, so you tell me what you want me to do. He says, and I'll do it.
Right.
And I tell you, it was the best time. But I heard all kind of rumors about what kind of guy he was, and the people around him, which I wasn't so impressed with the people around him. Mo was good, but there was a lot of people around him that I can see the claw marks, But I didn't have any problem with him. He was a great man. You met him.
I'll just interject my little story. Dan calls me up. I'm driving around, and we hadn't seen each other for years.
About
Success in Japan, and that was on hold. And Dan calls me and says, Lance, he said, would you like to meet Michael? I said, don't play with me, Dan. I don't have time to be playing with him. He said, no. He said, I want you to meet him. Dan, he would like to meet you. Because Dan turns things.
I told him. I told him about that.
But he said, I told him about you. Right. And that you're the first and this and that. I said, yeah, okay, right. Because I'm thinking in the back of my head, the first time I saw him when I didn't know Mo Brahman, he did Tokyo Dome.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting up in the crow's nest with binoculars. And I told my wife, who's my girlfriend then, the next time I meet him, it's going to be in person. I'm never going to come here and watch him pop up out of the floor and have binoculars see him. Right. So he's calling to make that dream come true. And I said, wait, no, you got to be kidding me. He said, no. I said, don't play down. He said, no, meet me at the arena, such and such and such. I pull up there. The guy knew me. They knew my name. I get up there. The only thing is, I'm standing in line because I think it's charged $500,000 for a minute.
It was It was they 500,000 yen to attend that event. And part of the event is they get the picture. They get a picture. Yeah.
And I hadn't paid any Dan, just Dan's guest. So I come there, and I had my assistant with me, and we're sitting up there, and no one's coming to get me, and I figure, okay. See, I saw him come through there and everything else. I stand
and the security is really tight because we saw Lance when I saw when he went through that.
So I'm standing in line, and every time someone comes, I said, "You have a ticket?" So yes, I put them in front because I didn't want to take advantage of that. Go up there and then something happened. Right. Because it wasn't tight.
Yeah.
The organization wasn't tight. So I didn't want to offend anyone that paid. They were only Japanese people.
Right.
Mo comes along and says, hey.
Yeah. What is Lance? Yeah.
I said, I'm waiting to get in line because I'm supposed to be sitting. He said, man, come on.
Yeah.
Pulls me up to the front line. Yeah. I come in there. There's Dan. Oblivious me in there. Maybe knew us, but he's back in the camera.
Right.
And I'm saying, wait, but it didn't work the way I thought it was going to work. But he's there. Michael's standing up there. And I'm going, no. So he gets up there. And they're going to take a picture, and I'm giving the guy my camera. Yeah. And Dan says something to him. He says, Michael, this is the guy I was telling you about. It was da-da-da.
Right. And he actually showed...
And he congratulated me.
Yeah.
This is the king of pop. Yeah. Congratulating little old Lance. obscure little Lance that nobody knows about unless they're here. And I'm going, what? So I put my arm around him, and I was surprised he was as tall as he was.
Yeah, that was the thing got me too.
He's almost my height.
Yeah.
And he was fit. I mean, just lean.
Yeah, he was. He was looking good then. Wasn't he looking?
Oh, yes.
He looked like Michael Jackson, the king of pop.
Right.
Didn't he?
Right.
Yeah.
And because I had my arm right around his waist.
Right.
No, just lean, but not, no bone. Not
Right.
that.
Right.
And they do that, and I get my minute, take the pictures and stuff. The guy that he had there, I could see they were.
Yeah,
The guy that had the camera.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. And Dan did that. I said, okay. I'm in Dan. Now I owe Dan. Because I get, and lean, but it was just off the hook.
It was. And it was one of the most viral things that happened. Now, here's the thing.
Then, then it went up on TV.
Yeah, it went viral. It went viral. But then, here's the thing. Okay, guess who else I invited to meet Mike?
That was
No.
The inspector.
No. The inspector. The inspector. No. Cullen.
And he wouldn't come.
Cullen would not come to meet Michael Jackson.
That's not his thing.
I said, call me when Janet Jackson gets
He
here.
did. I was gonna kill him, but I mean, he's
our heir.
Yeah.
But I should have went.
He should have.
I was thinking of
Should
calcium in the
have
future.
went.
I didn't know that. I didn't know at all.
Yeah. But what that did was that, because up until then I was starting to get stuff on Japanese TV, like but it was a little 5-minute program. They call them mini bangumis, and stuff like that. And nobody was really like taking me serious. But the deal that I cut with Morris and Michael Jackson, I told him, I said, okay, I want to be the only guy who filmed you guys. And actually, I made an agreement with AP. And I said, there'll be us and that. And so everybody has to buy footage from me. Now, this caused a lot of problems at the time with my other partners, in my company, which was the time, because they were like, oh, why you didn't put money, we're not going to make money. And I remember I was sitting in my house. And so, and I'm not going to embarrass the staff who left me, because now we're best friends, but they left, they just quit, says, I can't go any further with you, because this ain't working, and they say Michael Jackson, they think we should have charged zillions of dollars, So it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. I remember me and my assistant Riho, and we were sitting there, because I had told them, don't worry, people are going to start calling us when they realize they can't get this footage except for us, And I had her there before speaking Japanese. So, she kind of looks at me and said, hey, look, I got to leave, And I'm sitting there, and just as she was getting ready to get up and go, the phone starts going off the hook. We start getting calls from all these TV networks and, ABC News, CBS News. And the next day, I remember, because I saw, I gave them the footage. And the next day I remember, because I kind of got up late, because the thing was, we had to be there early in the morning, like 6:30 in the morning, because Michael would wake up early, and I didn't realize, but he was signing autographs for his fans, But I remember I come in, and he's up having breakfast, and he runs out to me. He says, did you see it? I said, what? He said, did you see it? I says, I'm trying to think, what? He says, oh, it's all over the world. All the TV stations in the U.S. are running it. People are.
You mean they're signing?
No. The part that I filmed at the airport, because I told him, I said, let me film it. Don't let anybody else film it. We put it out through AP, which was Miles, and it went out all over the world. And it was just, it was thousands and thousands of fans. And everybody, first thing people said, Michael Jackson is back, because it was just thousands of fans. And he says, I haven't had coverage like this. He says, I can't remember when I had coverage like this.
Right.
And he goes to me, and he just looks at me. He goes, keep doing it, and stuff like that. And then the next day, it blew up even more, because I told him, because he would come to me, and his bodyguard was kind of uncomfortable, because Michael would just come up to me and start talking, because I'm next to him with a camera, so. We started having these conversations. It was just me and him, and we're talking about everything from this to this. But most of it, he was just curious, and he would say, so what do you think I should do? I said, look, I think you should just be normal. And he said, what do you mean? I says, is there a reason why you don't like, shaking your people's hands or talking to them? Or he said, no, I love that. But he says, my handler said, don't do it. I said, let's just do it. I said, for the next few days, let's just go out and you just be normal. And he says, talking. I said, I want you talking. I said, but nobody ever hears you talking, you know? And so, and he literally would just follow everything that I would tell him to do, which I'm thinking again, like you, this is the king of pop.
That's right.
You know, I saw a little bit of a resentment, not from Morris. Morris was like, hey man, rock it, you know, because Morris was a confidant of him. Right. You know, he but I'm saying, and I'm looking at, here's these two black guys in Japan who's basically impacting on the biggest star, in the world. And I remember by the third day, we had set up trips to Disney and some stuff like. So then they started talking to him about, you know, what can he do to really repair his image. So I think it was Morris who came up with the idea. Said, so why don't we go to a military base? And all his handlers like, no, because at the same time, a company came in, and I know this for a fact. So you know, because I heard all the things about he has no money and stuff like this, but I was there when this company came in. This Japanese company, they're gonna pay him $2 million. To do some kind of commercial and stuff like that. He had the option of doing that or going to the military base to meet the troops. Yeah, for no fee. He chose to meet the military. So and I remember I was talking to him a little bit, and he says, because you know, I was so guarded to what I could talk to him about, because when they briefed me, they said, don't talk to him about this. Yeah, I mean, they literally had a list this long. But as we were shooting, and like we would set up, because I would set up stuff. I would say, hey, we're going to do this stuff. And so he would sit down. He says, okay, what do you want me to do? And then we waiting while people set up. And he would go like, he go, dude, he says, I told him, I said, man, nice tension. He says, yeah. He said, Michael Jordan, give me. He said, I'll get you a pair. I was like, yeah, right. You know, and stuff like that. He said, no. He said, give it to me and stuff like that. And they would say, hey, you know what? We should go to your house. And I was saying, no, you can't go to my house, man. And he says, why not? You know, and so then he goes, you know what? He says, why don't you guys?
That's my phone.
Why don't you guys move to the hotel while we stand there? Because he said, we wait for you to come in. And then I think, okay, here comes the weird stuff now, you know. And but he said, no. He said, it's on me. So you guys come on in and stay there. He said, that way we can talk about all this stuff and things like that. We don't have to.
I remember you inviting me to the Four Seasons, right?
Four Seasons Hotel. Same thing. I invited him again, you know, and so we moved there. So, you know, we would sit there and talk because this guy didn't sleep. Now that's one thing that was true about him, and I'm the same way. He would be up at 2 or 3 in the morning, and my room was just right here, so I can see him. He'd be out there walking the house and stuff like that, and then he would say, hey, about tomorrow, you know, let's do this stuff like that. So we would have these conversations about playing spades, or you know, he liked to drink gin, he liked Kentucky Fried Chicken. You know, we have all these kind of weird things. And so I saw a part of him that was so contrast to what I was
the media's put out.
And then I saw the dedication to his fans. They had thousands of people down there that would bring stuff for him to autograph. His people would pick it up. He would spend most of the night, and he would not stop until he signed the last one, bring it back downstairs, and make sure everybody got it. I mean, and I saw that, and I thought, this is why he's the king of pop, because this is the stuff people don't see. So, so when he told me, he says, you know, and this was, I think, the next to the last day after we got back from the military base. He came up to me. He said, hey, I want to thank you. He said, I want to thank you for what you've done for me. He said, because I've never got this. He said, we was watching Fox, and what's the guy, Bill on Fox? He was very famous, but he was kind of like a Michael Jackson hater. But he said, on his Fox report, Bill O'Reilly, he said, hey, Michael Jackson went and visited the troops today, and they were showing the footage. And he said, you know, I ain't been the biggest Michael Jackson fan, but he says, I salute him today. I salute Michael Jackson for doing this, because that's a stand-up guy to go and do that. And everybody just went ballistic, man, because they said Fox News was even coming. Right. And I remember I watched the ABC News thing, and they basically said, because they had this thing that you talk about the dinner, right? The 5,000, and and his people went, well, what do we do? I said, tell everybody. I said, what?
And they started copying.
I said, tell everybody that he's charging for this for fans. Right. I said, it's Michael Jackson. I said, if I had 5,000, I'd pay for him, you know. And he kind of overruled, because his PR person said, no, we're just gonna say it. But he said, so you think I should just say it? I said, yeah. I said, you know how many stars probably looking at this and thinking out they'll do the same thing.
They did.
And it did. And the media took it that way. I remember ABC News, which is still, you can still find it on the net. They came out and said, hey, he's charging this, but, you know, I don't see one fan complaining, you know, and things like that. So the end result out of all that, so, you know, he was leaving right before he left. He said, hey, I'm going to have a comeback. And he says, you know, you should come work for me, you know. And he said, I would love to have you work for me. And I told him, I said, hey, man, this is good enough for me. I said,
that's when you hear that,
yeah.
I can just, you hit it. That was nice.
And the next time I heard from him, he was dead. You know?
That's right, yeah. Because
So,
I was thinking, I said, the next time you came, because you told me more about him than it hurt. And the one thing that I felt, you know, you feel people when you get with them. You can sense it. When I put my arm around him, I said, I felt guilty about anything that I'd said negative about this guy because I could feel a real man beside me.
Yeah.
And it made me feel good. A real person who's really good, doesn't have to be, but it's really good. But you, like you said, which I couldn't tell, he has people around him who he's trusted, who don't have his best interests.
One day we were in Big Camera, right? And he was shopping and he was doing stuff. And his daughter, what's her name, Paris? His daughter, she was like 9 years old. But I remember I was just sitting there because we only had one rule, is that when he was doing some personal stuff, you know, really personal stuff, I'd turn off my camera. You know, and that was basically my decision. He never came to me once and said turn it off. I would do it. He was teaching her how to moon walk. And of course, as a news guy, I'm thinking, oh, I got to get that. But it was such a personal thing because she was watching, they had a big TV screen, and they were watching Michael Jackson live in Budapest, and the daughter was like, how you did it? So he's showing her, and I had the camera on, and I turned it off. I thought, this is their moment, let me do it. And so after I did that, he was looking at computers and stuff, and his daughter came to me, and she was sitting down there, she says, you know, he likes you. And I heard the voice, and I was looking at it, it was this small girl. She said, he really likes you, you know. She says, my dad, there's a lot of people he doesn't like, but he likes you. You know? And that was it. That was the only thing she said to me, you know. She said, he's probably going to buy you something, you know. And that was it, you know. And it was, but... That's good. So that was a good turning point for you. I talked to her.
Yeah, Catherine. Yeah.
But you never completed the story about the shoes.
So I got the shoes.
He sent you the shoes.
I have them to this day. You know?
Wow.
Yeah.
From Michael Jordan.
Yeah, from Michael Jackson. Yeah.
No, but these are Michael Jordan shoes.
Well, they were Jordans.
Jordans. Yeah.
And I remember every time I used to try to wear them, I said, "You can't put the shoes on," you know. So now I got them stored away and locked away. So
that's neat. So that was a good turning. So that Michael Jackson that gave you confidence that you never had. That put you in a whole different level.
Confidence, but it exposed me to all the TV stations. They saw me completely different from them.
Did.
So then what happened was that Warner Brothers, and this is a weird story because Warner Brothers, I actually had fell out of favor with them. And then speaking of brothers again, it was an interaction with Lance that actually got me back into favor with Warner Brothers. And so Warner Brothers came to me, you know, after they saw the Michael Jackson thing and stuff like that, and said, "Hey, have you ever tried to do bigger promotional events?" You know, and of course, you know, it's like that Ghostbuster thing. Like,
right.
You're a guy, yes, you know. And at first, I told them yes, and then they came to me and they said, "Yeah, because we'd like you to organize this event for Will Smith out on the military bases." You know, and again, this was another one of those things. Like I'm like.
You're right. Yeah, right.
You know,
and you kicked it, man.
Even when they said it was happening, I was like, yeah, right. And it didn't hit me until the day that, you know, I guess Will Smith came into town, and I get this call, and they said, "Hey, can you come to the Grand Hyatt Hotel?" You know, so I'm like, man. So I'm kind of fired up now because I said we'll probably meet Will, you know, later and stuff like that, and things like that. And so they sent me up to the room, you know. And I go up there, and I can see that it's like a kind of a really luxurious cafe or something up there. You know, it's like it was something, but it looked like it was a private area, right? A big suite private area. And I go in there, and it's Will Smith, you know. And Will Smith said, "Hey, come on in, man," you know, and stuff like that. And it's just me and Will Smith. And I go up there, and I sit up there, and he goes, "How you doing?" You know, I'm like. He says, "Yeah." He said, "Hey, bro, it's just you and me." You know, he said, "Don't go hype on me," you know. And I was like, he said, "But I wanted to, you know, just invite you to breakfast, and we can talk about what's going to go down, you know. And Lance, I think that's when it hit me that I'm going to actually be successful in this thing. It hit me because I said, hey,
This is you.
you know, Will Smith is like the bookend to Michael Jackson,
Right.
you know, because at the time, he's the biggest star in the world. And this guy, and he's buying me breakfast, and he's sitting there, and we're just chilling out, and we're just talking.
Isn't it funny how you start to see it? You're making me think about a lot of stuff, because when I first saw you, like you said, it's interesting, unconsciously, when I talk with Dan, you'd already had certain minds about what you thought about success, and I saw it, and I said, I'm not going to say anything because we're going to do this little show, and I'm not going to say a thing to you about that. But, and I, of course, every now and then, and I said, man, we got to get that head right, because it's just how you decide to perceive yourself. But when you're in an environment like that makes it difficult for you to start thinking that way, and it's just a thought. Once you shift that, it changes everything.
And that's what I said. I would go back to say that had I not met you, that I'm not. I don't. You know, I'm not one of those guys that said, well, then this might have never happened. You like to think that you would have made stuff happen. You know, but I am sure that I wouldn't have had the confidence to deal with like the Will Smith situation and stuff. I mean, because you know, I always, you know, when I saw Lance, I loved the way Lance walked around. I love the way he walked into a room.
Right.
You know, he walked into a room.
Like,
you knew it was Lance. Yeah, he walked into it. And I love the way that he resonated with people. You know, I could see it wasn't fake. You know, he wasn't doing it because I'm trying to be popular and stuff. Because he didn't give a damn whether you like them or not. But he accorded them a kind of respect that and then he got that back, and I thought, see, I want that. And
that's interesting.
And what he gave me was that, hey, this goes with success. It goes back to success in Japan. He says, hey, he said, you know, you have to get to a plateau where you're financially secure, and that you feel like when you walk in this room with these guys, you belong there. I remember how he said that. He said, I walk in, I feel like I belong there. See, when I walked in with Will Smith, it took me a couple of minutes, but you know, after we talked, I felt I belonged there. Yeah, I didn't feel like I'm a stranger. You know, you know, and stuff like that. And it just from there it shaped it, because right after that, Fox came to me. Because they, you know, again now I have a name, so it's not like, you know, who am I and stuff like that. And I remember Fox came to me, and getting back to the last thing, so the guy Ward Plock and June Lee, they came to me. We used to play basketball over at Hardy Barrett.
How did you meet Ward?
By playing basketball. He used to live over by Hardy Barracks. This was back before 9/11. And you can go in there and you can play basketball. So I would play that.
By the helicopter pad.
I thought you met him on the train. I mean, on the bus coming from the airport. From.
Is that Ward or June?
Which one was that? I thought that was Ward.
No. Ward I met at the thing because they introduced, because Shigel introduced me to Ward. Yeah, June I met on the train.
No, on the bus coming from Narita Airport.
No.
Oh, okay.
No. Now Ward I met when Shigel, the guy who worked at Fox, had called him and says, because he came in and says, hey, I need a producer, you know, stuff like that. So I met him, but it wasn't when I met him, I realized, oh, this is the guy I play basketball with, you know, sometime and the thing, you know. And so he goes, and we had this conversation, and he said, hey, I'd like to hire you, you know. Now, again, this is the first time now in Japan that somebody came to me and said, I want to hire you and stuff like that. He says, well, I want you to do this project. And so he comes in, he's already got an offer on the table. He's already got an offer on the table, and I forget, it was $100,000 or stuff like that. And I let the two guys with me convince me not to take the deal.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, because they're thinking now that this guy, first of all, he gave up the money, that kind of money. It was big money, much bigger money I had ever earned in my life before. And he just did it like almost in a conversation like this, like, oh, hey, here's the offer. You know, $240,000. It was $240,000 to produce this series of shows. And these guys come to me like, hey, we should wait because he'll go. You know. Now this was I call this my last official dumb decision.
No, but see, the thing is, I understand them saying that too, because they had two white guys, and what they start thinking about where they saw themselves, But Dan, if he had thought about the situation, you got to think about what the man that's offering this sees.
Yeah. Yes.
And they couldn't see that. They're just thinking about it from their perspective.
Yeah.
But Dan says, things like the guy, like you told me what he said to you. He said, wait, I know.
Yeah.
He knew. He's like,
because he has to ask.
You could tell.
Because we was like, well, we got money too, and he goes, yeah. He says, okay.
He did his homework.
I don't think you guys have money. I think but, and he was very cordial and stuff.
Right. He did his research.
And again, I regretted that. But these guys, they came back.
Mm-hmm.
And so they came back and they said, hey, look, we want to hire you. Mm-hmm. We want to hire you. Forget the crew and all these people and stuff like that. We want to hire you. And so then I thought, and this is again, like I said, from Lance, where I kind of got the confidence from, Lance and stuff like that. I said, well, if you got to hire me, you got to hire my crew. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't even believe the words as they were coming out my mouth that said that. But I meant it. Because I thought
loyalty. It means it comes together.
I'm only as good as all these guys.
That's right.
These guys have been with me now for 6 years, and stuff like that. And the first thing he says, no. And so I think, well, I blew it again, But then they came back a month later and says, we'll take you and one person, This went on for.
That's interesting. That's so good.
No, I think Dan has a lot more confidence than he gives himself credit for, because I remember when Dan was in Okinawa and he was doing the newspaper business, and he said, you know what, I'm going to get into the TV and film entertainment business, and I'm going to go to Tokyo. And he came to Tokyo broke.
Yeah. Yep.
So that took so much confidence in yourself to make
it's
that
naivety too. It's
say,
naivety
I'm gonna
too.
move forward with my life, and I'm going to take it up to the moon.
Well, I think about it because we were talking about the story like when you sprang. Well, he was the one who inspired me in Okinawa, and so after we did I did the story with him, we became friends, Right. And so we would hang out because we'd be the only two people we could talk to about because we were the only two who were and Jesse who were not attached to the military, who was making a pretty good income over there, right? And I remember one day, and this was my newspaper, I was coming to his house, not to his house, to one of his businesses, and he was picking up checks. This is when they still mailed you checks, stuff like that. And he made like 2-3 visits. Now to this day, I don't know if he did it on purpose, just but it was just a natural thing. And I saw him and I thought, what kind of money is this brother making? Because he's just sitting there, and that's what changed me. That actually kicked me out of the newspaper business, because I saw that and I thought, okay, I can stay here. And I was at the time, I kind of risen to the king of the dog there, media-wise. I was like the top guy, I was the guy everybody referred to. Everybody wanted me to interview them and stuff like that. But it was Okinawa, and I started thinking about Tokyo. And I thought, well, I got to go. And then there was other thing that forced me out of Okinawa. I wrote this story that ended up getting this general fired and stuff like that. So I was kind of not person non gratis with the military, really, which again, that was 95% of the community in Okinawa. But yeah, so I think if you look at confidence in that way, yeah, I did have confidence, but always something spurred me on. When I met you, when I did that, and listened to you talk, when I met him, I saw him, just a little thing, him picking up, 3 different checks at 3 different times of the day, little things like that. I remember, one of my producers, Richard and Mike, they will tell everybody, it says, Dan sees something, he never forgets it. It never leaves him. I think it's just my way when I was a journalist, that when people talk to you, I had to remember. Because back then, you had to write down what they were saying. But that's my way. I would look at something and I would quickly kind of internalize it and stuff like that. So it's always those little things that I see, and those are the things that I think click on. It's that light that clicks on, that when I'm in this situation that, like I said before, I would have dealt with a different way. It doesn't faze me now.
It's interesting. I know what Cullen's saying. I think what he's saying, I don't think the way I interpret what you just said to Dan about him having the confidence is that if that seed's not already in you, I thought, you can't see it.
Exactly.
It's like telling someone a joke. If you tell them a joke and they don't already have some precursor, something in them that they can familiarize themselves with it, they won't understand the joke. It'll go right over their head. But because you have this in you, but somehow sometimes you can have a damper. Like when I asked you, I said, how do you feel about money? The first thing I said to you, you said, oh man, I don't care. I don't care. It didn't mean nothing. And I said, okay, this brother and I hope he's a good photographer, because I really hope he's a good photographer, because he's starting off the wrong way right away. Because I asked him that, and I said, and the first thing I said, I'm not going to say a thing about it, but I said, let's not call it money. Let's say
was that
energy.
not different the next time you met me, right? Was that not
He
different?
didn't talk about that anyway.
I learned quick.
I said, nah, this cat said he don't care a thing about it. But what you around me for?
Lance, we need to miss her right now. We need to miss her right now. That's not you. I'm not the only person you had that effect on. Boom, right?
No.
What's the first thing we thought, right? Yeah. It's like I gotta bring it when I'm going in the.
Because the thing is, I'm just saying when people start talking about that, it says so much about them, and not them as a person. I'm saying that seed's not in them.
Yeah.
That's all it is, and I'm not going to try to. I used to be the type. I get mad at you because I'm saying, stop trying to teach people. If they have if they have that in them, they have it in them. If they don't, you're wasting a lot of time, and it can pull you. You talking about crabs in a barrel?
Yeah.
That's what that is. You keep on trying to tell them, and every time you reach in there, they pull you further. And you say, no, let me help this one, and they pull you further. Then you can't get out, and you forget what you were even reaching in for. That's why you have to keep yourself clean and energize yourself, and focus on those seeds you have in you. You have it in you.
It took me about 15 years to finally get that in my head that you can keep trying to tell people,
if the seed's not
help them, but it's just not in them, and you know.
And it doesn't have anything to do with. They could be biologically connected to you.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with it. Just because you come through the same.
This guy was a walking ATM bank for so many people. Hey, this is what's the weird thing about Cullen, which I actually admire, but then at the same time, like, dude, you gotta
lose it. Yeah,
because he would help so many people, and I mean, help like give money and stuff like. He helped me one time, and it was another big break for me when I went to Las Vegas.
You told me, yeah.
So when I started, as I was getting up, and see, the thing with me is I was never afraid. I started investing in investing in camera gear when I visited him, and he had a studio. So I'm thinking like, okay, I got to make that commitment. I got to commit that, stuff like that. He used to tell me all the time. He said, hey man, if you're trying to go into a certain direction, you just got to do it. You got to spend the money and do it. Well, that's great if you have money, But at the time, I was, I'd make money, I'd buy something. So, I had stuff like, and I remember I saw him help people, and so one day I thought, you know what, I didn't ask him directly, but we were talking about it, and he says, why don't you just go? And I said, well, look, buddy. And I remember the look on his face, he gave me that look like, dude, here,
you gonna go
take the money, you better pay me back. Don't make me come looking for you or something like that. Nah, he was just joking. But again, those are the things that I think that there's something to meeting the right people.
Isn't there something? And having the seed in there that needs to be, watered at that time.
And having a resource like that you can go into, because it's you get different things for it. Like I said, sometimes it's just inspiration. Sometimes it's advice. Sometimes it's money. But it's all of these things that sort of comes out.
It's not
and then, like I said, I think it comes back around, because, like you said, when you got to meet Michael Jackson,
that's right.
or when we did the show, or stuff.
That's right. That's right.
Together.
Exactly.
It's just a natural evolution of that. So when I look at like a time like today, just to sit here and talk about
this, isn't that something?
It's so many things. We could probably do this for 5 hours.
We probably can,
It's 5 days. It's so much.
But the thing is, I do believe this, because this is hitting on stuff that I really get inspired about when we talk about success, or talk about things that seem to be metaphysical in a way.
Right.
Because why are we together? Why are we able to do this? Why do we say, let's do this? And we're starting to do it now. But there's so many people out there that we don't have the time to reach and touch just by them seeing this. We'll give them the inspiration. No, we're in Tokyo, Japan. This is Tokyo, one of on the other side of the planet from where we come from. Provided it's really a circle and not flat.
I saw that.
But still, when you think like that, it makes it really interesting how we get to this point.
Yeah, and if I was in Detroit and had never came to Tokyo, I would be thinking, what, there's black people in Tokyo?
Okay, that's right there. Well, the media's starting to change that now, like you said, because when you looked online and saw all the things that had to do with black people in Japan, had over 1,000 hits. thousands and thousands.
Video about black people in Japan is doing great as far as traffic, visitors, subscribers, views.
And that wasn't my reason for wanting to do this. My reason for wanting to do this is that it can be inspirational for someone. You know, I wanted to be big, and then it didn't hurt when I started watching some of the other podcasts, like from the biggest one, Joe Rogan, when I saw his stuff, and I started watching how they went through it, and I started overthinking it. I said, "Now let's get natural. Wherever we take this camera, this iPod, and have a little couple of mics and sit down. Let's start doing some interviews." And that's why I asked Cullen, let's sit down and do this. I think it's easier to play off of each other because you're asking questions I may not ask. Let's get.
It's cool too because what people don't realize is sometimes we go shopping to the military bases.
We do.
And he will tell you. I don't know if you heard this. We love those trips. I love them.
I love them too.
I love those trips because we sit there, we get to talk, we talk about everything from A to Z.
That's good.
We couldn't print most of this stuff.
We can't. But it's fun and it's refreshing. It's re-energizing. It energizes. You think you can do what you're doing out there, but then you can still get together and feel good about yourself. You need that because it's hard to get out there.
Yeah,
you know.
And we have our little patterns. You know, we go out. We have a great breakfast, which
we sure do.
Brother Cullen always pays for.
Yeah,
that's right.
We haven't had those trips in so long
because of coronavirus.
We're gonna need a therapist pretty soon.
If we don't,
to get over it, right?
Well, I think this is kind of like this is therapeutic.
It's very therapeutic.
Just sit back here and to go through this.
I love the fact that you guys are doing this. You know, I love the idea. And when Lance called me last night, I was like, "Oh man!" I said, "This is going to be good," because, like I said, I think that when I look at the people who's having a big impact on people. Now, Lance probably doesn't, he doesn't realize this, but he has such a positive influence on so many people, especially Japanese. You know, we're all members of the Tokyo American Club, and I've never had one person that's associated with that club who I hear so much positive stuff about, in terms of like, oh, like he talked to me, how he did this and stuff like that. And I said, now that's leadership. See, leadership is a failed thing now. People don't talk about leadership, about your ability to lead. I think we're all leaders in capacity. When I look at I love what Lance did with you when you were talking about your business. He said, "Hey man, be proud of your business." And I think about all the people that you have employed, all the people that you have employed, who have lives, because of these guys sitting in this room. That's something that we don't get enough credit for.
That's true.
We don't get it credit.
I have to say that the one thing that, like, when you got me involved with the media and we started doing that. You can get to a certain stage where you had me do makeup, and I said, that's the hard thing for me. When I started being too concerned about how I look and saying, okay, let me do this and let me. So I can understand, Michael. Just take it to the furthest extreme. You become like, or some of these other actors that you look at them and they're so stiff, they can't smile.
It works. Only film me from the right.
But I mean, different things like that, and you start thinking, I'm taking too much and I'm losing the realness. So I said, doing this, and people get used to the way you look, the way you act, the way you are. Just stop trying to pretend. Be natural as you can possibly be. You don't have to be vulgar. And there's something I liked about both of you that I really respect. I tend to like to use profanity when I'm friendly with people. Neither one of you guys do. And I like that. But I like that. I really like that because it's not about this and that. And you articulate yourselves without using it. But I like it. But every now and then when we get into it, you guys will say, you'll say it, and I like it, and it's natural too. It's not like you have to force it. It becomes natural, and I like that. But I can tend to do that. I mean, I could be a potty mouth if I need to be. So much so that when I called my mom once, she said, "You keep on talking like that, I'm gonna hang up." And I didn't realize I was talking about something. She said, "I'm gonna hang up," and it hurt, and I didn't talk to her about it.
We had talked earlier too because maybe Cullen more than me, but. We came up, church was really big in our families, right? And stuff like that. So I think it came from a different thing. Yeah, because I remember I had to go to Sunday school and stuff like that.
So did I did.
Just the curse and trying to get away with it was, Oh,
not just that. I couldn't, even in my family, I couldn't say shut up. That was profanity. To tell someone to shut up. You couldn't do that. And we came up at a time, because we're just about a decade older than you, that if we looked at our parents the wrong way,
Oh yeah.
Even that.
Well, same,
You couldn't look at. You could not. Yeah. But you couldn't look at them a certain way. And don't get up and stomp away or so. You what? You better walk away like a little timid. You better show your belly. Show your belly.
I love when people used to go up to me and says, "Yeah, well, my parents used to do a timeout."
That timeout. You got to be kidding me.
My dad's timeout was a belt. You know?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Timeout.
My timeout was an extension cord.
Yeah. But I was. You two. I was fortunate. My father raised me and never hit me, never touched me. So I was a little bit different that way.
I'm surprised. Mark's.
I didn't have any of that.
My mom was a talker. My mom didn't believe in hitting. So my dad was like, "Hey, he was."
My father did, and my mother used to when I was young. But
and we had a very difficult relationship for many years.
You told me,
that, you know.
Yeah.
You know, but then he changed, and I remember when he came back and apologized. He said, "Son," he says, "Man," he said, and I thought about it. I said, "My father, you know, he didn't get out of grade school, you know, and he had to work, and he did it, and
he's in America. He's in America, first of all.
Him and my mom divorced. He was at every sports event that I did.
That's good.
You know, I knew guys who never saw their father. They never saw him. My father was always there, and my father he used to bring this volleyball net set up in the park, and all these kids would come and play because he worked at this park and race thing, and I told him like, you know, how you have time for all of these kids? And he,
Right us, yeah.
But he had time.
But I know what you mean. But I mean,
you
yeah.
know, he told me, he said, "Look, son," he said, "you know, I don't have a lot." He said, "But he says you're gonna understand this as you get older." He says, "You know, it's not easy being a black man, you know." He says, "There's things that I can't do." He says, "I want to do. I can look at this guy who works right across from me. I can do a job 10 times better than him.
But they won't let me
get promoted.
They will never let me
get that." Yeah. And so when you look at that and you look at all the stuff that's going on today, and this is getting back to I think where this podcast might be helpful in that I think we're going through a digression in terms of how America is now, because I was talking to my grandson earlier, and he was talking about problems he was having and stuff like that, and I was thinking like, man, it almost seems like I'm back 30 or 40 years, because I remember some of the problems I was having and stuff like that, but I thought we kind of went through this, and then I think that people need to see examples where they can say, okay, because I don't think any of us, had a silver spoon coming up, but I think we lucked out. All at a point, because when they look at you, they will say, "Well, Lance Lee, he's been successful all his life." But you can tell them, you told me stuff. Yeah.
No.
And I've seen a brother here on the same thing. We've all gone through that stuff, but I think where we persevered is what makes us different.
That's right.
Because there's something in us that said, "No, this." That might get me, that might get me, that might get me that, but this ain't gonna get me.
That's right.
This ain't gonna get me. You being, trying to hold me down is not gonna get me.
That's right. Look, we're going to take this podcast. I think we've been here for a while now. We're going to try to slow it down now and make sure that we've gotten enough of it on here. And then editing, I don't know how we're going to go about that yet. This is all in progress, but that was a lot. Dan, I really appreciate it. I can't tell you how good I feel. This isn't going to be the last time. We're going to have to do this again and do it again and again and again and again, and then
I'm honored to be on it, man. Now I will tell the people out there that, hey, I'm going to surprise you guys, because I have interviewed both of these guys. I got the footage, so when we start editing, we're sticking some of that footage. We're sticking some of that success in Japan and my life in Japan.
That'd be interesting.
And this man lighting a candle, candle. So we got to show them the whole picture there, but
that could be interesting.
I'm really proud to sit down with you brothers. Yeah. You guys know from my heart that there's not two men that I don't admire higher in my life, and not only me, but my family admires.
Right.
So
it goes right back at you, man, because I'm telling you,
this is a privilege for me. This is a privilege. This is an honor.
I have to say, I can't say enough about Dan and Cullen. You've been recent in my life. We're doing the podcast together, and your generosity is obvious as soon as you get to if he lets you get to know him. Brother, he will just like he said, editor. I don't need one. I don't need one.
We all agree that he's the most eccentric of us.
He is most definitely. He will. I said, man, brother, will you stop it, Cullen? Man, you got to be able to receive the way you give. The cat wants to give it out. I said, man, come on. you know.
Let's own up to this on actual film, so we're on record.
That's right.
Do we not, when we go out to a restaurant, expect him to pay off?
No, I don't. No, that's why I tried to stop him. I'm trying to stop him. He knows I'm like. I don't do that.
He's always, because he always sneaks off. Remember how he used to sneak off like, oh, I'm going to the bathroom, you know?
Well, Lance did that the other day.
Because I know if I didn't, I know if he did. Him and Danny. Because I know if he didn't, if I didn't, he wouldn't. I said, Cullen, stop doing that, man.
Stop it.
Yeah. And that could be another thing psychologically. I'm saying I don't want to be in anybody's debt now, brother. Come on now. No, but it's good.
How many years I did that with Dan? Like 20 years.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
I enjoy it because it's him. See, I've learned from him now. There's certain perks that he likes to do, and I don't disrupt it.
You say that's good. If you want to buy your lunch, it's good.
I used to pull my buddy out, and he got so creative in so many ways. You know, I had to go, and people said, he's already paid. I was like, I think in one place where we went in, he even put his credit card when he came in. So I couldn't even, cause I was trying to beat him to it. So. But I always say thank you, and
so we're gonna cut it here.
I know where you do it from. You do it not that you're trying to show off and stuff. You do it because it's
obvious.
Love and
that's obvious.
I feel, and when you give,
you receive,
and you let it go out, it's gonna come all back to you, and you're gonna grow, and everybody around you grows. And one final thing,
I want to say too is that I've always felt with you, man, that. I had a brother. This is more than just a friendship.
That's good. That's good.
Because I knew that if I ever hit a wall, ever did this, that without a question,
you'd be there. Yeah.
They were going. And I tell my daughters, say if anything ever happens to me, they know who they're going to go to find out. Hey, get it.
Well, they called me that one time when they thought you did. Scare the shit. Anyway, we're gonna cut right now, and then I'm gonna turn this.